One of the really wonderful things about Newcastle East, and one of the reasons I moved here in the first place, was it's such a hospitable place. It's an extremely tolerant neighbourhood. We live on the streets. It's probably unlike any other community in Newcastle because it's a place where people enjoy socialising with their neighbours. We love the heritage feel about it. We love the fact that people love to come here. Cruise ships stop nearby. They love to come up here to Newcastle East. Of course, for 3 months of the year, it's all barricaded off. We can't live on the streets and people find it extremely difficult to get in and out.
In July 2016, the Supercars Newcastle 500 race was announced. The race takes place every year through the historic streets and parkland of Newcastle East. For people who live and work in the area, the race is having a long-term impact on their lives, health and businesses. The fallout has led many to feel disillusioned with government and democratic processes. This is their story.
When you think about how we first got to know about this event, we just got something in the mail one day, woke up, went to the mailbox, and there we had a little leaflet from Supercars saying they were going to conduct a motor race through our neighbourhood. And I looked at it and I thought, oh well, it's only for 3 days, I'll go away for the weekend. Little did I know.
It was a bit of a shock. I think it was the 14th of June, a few years ago. Watt Street was closed off, and I asked someone in the street what was going on, and they said it was the beginning of Supercars. I had no idea. There'd been no information given to me as a business person here in Newcastle East.
It took a while of mixing with other people out on the street to realise that, wow, like a motor racing circuit? It started to dawn on us that maybe this was a bit more involved than we thought. So we started doing some research and started realising that this was going to involve extensive infrastructure and an enormous imposition on our Newcastle East community.
My name's Lily Brennan. I run Arundel Secondary Education Centre, which is an after-school tutoring organisation. We've been around now for about 45 years, and about 25 years of that time we've been in the East End of Newcastle. Financially, Supercars has had a significant effect on our business. We've lost a number of students. We've lost about 20% of our student base as a turnover. Some of them have just left because of the stress of coming into town. We've had people who say, look, Lindley, we just can't face coming into Newcastle. And that was especially from the first time. The first race, when everything was dug up and getting into the East End could take an hour or longer, and getting out another hour. And if you've then got to drive to Maitland, that's difficult. One of the reasons we're still in existence is that we operate from my own premises, and the fact that my partner has taken over payment of all the rent so that we can actually then survive. And it has been a survival matter.
My business has been operating now for 11 years, and from the day that Watt Street was closed, my takings went down about 65%. That was because all parking had gone and there had been no communication with us about alternative parking. It took quite a few emails to a whole range of people to try and sort out the issue about parking. And even then, it didn't include wee businesses that were in this part of Hunter Street. Only those businesses in Watt Street were given access to parking for their clients.
But no, the Shopkeepers didn't make any money because Supercars brings its own caterers from Queensland or Sydney. An example is a little very popular, almost a meeting place for different people at different parts of the day. He thought, well, I'll lay on takeaway coffee, which he's never done before, sell nothing. He was left with it all. What they wanted was alcohol, because all that other stuff they could get down on the park.
100 businesses have closed or moved on now out of the city since the beginning. Some people refinanced, some people borrowed from their parents or remortgaged, relocated or just closed. I think it's been such a loss to this part of the city because it was very vibrant and there was a lot of very unique businesses that were here. Slowly we've been regrouping and continuing to attempt a whole range of different strategies to keep people coming back in. But as the locals say, they're not prepared to come back in because they perceive there's no parking.
There's also, of course, the question of safety. One of the big issues that residents have been concerned about are noise levels. Supercars did release a noise management plan, which certainly showed that residents very close to the track would have to wear hearing protection. We did our own noise monitoring, which certainly showed that noise levels for people living around the track would indeed damage their hearing.
You went and got your wristbands so you could get out in case there was an emergency and you had to, and you had children. You got earplugs with those and they were useless. They kept out nothing like the sound that we were going to be exposed to, or the people who were getting them were. So they weren't even very cooperative there. People went and bought their own.
Noise impact on people that have no choice but to be here because they're residents has been shown to be quite excessive. There are a number of ways that can be ameliorated, and the first of those would be to reduce that 95 dBA to a lesser, perhaps I would say 89 decibels at 30 metres would make an incredible difference. Destination New South Wales is the regulatory authority. It's entirely up to them to ensure that the residents' health and safety is looked after, and so it is their responsibility to see that noise limits are reduced in this instance. It's not necessarily up to Supercars or CAMS to drive that. It's up to the regulatory authority to ensure that they're obliged to do it.
There was a lot of very dangerous events that happened, and it was quite shocking. Many times I'd walk across the crossing up here in Watt Street, and it was either myself or someone else was almost run over. I had to report that crossing many, many times. There was older ladies who were close to being hit. I was very close to being hit. And there wasn't much care, in my opinion, about pedestrians who were around.
The other issue, big safety issue that we have is pieces flying over the safety fences. Because here in Newcastle East, our homes are less than 5 metres away, which means that anything flying over the safety fence is going to perhaps kill somebody. We did have tyres flying over the safety fence, the first event, and they did injure spectators. Last year we did have a long piece of a car flying over the safety fence, just missing a young boy. Eventually, one of these car parts may very well strike a spectator or strike a resident. So no, we don't think the race is safe at all. They talk about the height of the safety fences, and this is all according to regulation, but what they don't talk about is the distance between the safety fence and the houses. There is no other circuit where houses are less than 5 metres from racing cars.
Get down, you two! Get off there!
My opinion is that fence, if it were to be where it should be, at 3 metres back, possibly should be even further back. The CAMS manual also states that, yes, 3 metres from the first and second line of protection, but it also says it must be that fence must be 6 metres from the track edge. So it's quite obvious for about 50% of the track here in Newcastle, that 3 metre distance does not occur. So what you have residents that are being thrust into a situation which sees them in an area, that is on the footpath outside of their homes, that can only be deemed as an unsafe area, and that the risk of either harm or even death is real, so they have every reason to be concerned.
Because a lot of our people are frail elderly. We've got 3 30-unit blocks here within this area, which will be fenced off, who have frail and elderly in them. What if they needed help, you see? So they did set up an emergency station across the road here. They staffed it each day of those 3 days, so people could go there. I don't know what they would do if there was an emergency, how they'd get them out. Maybe, I have no idea.
Now, during the consultation sessions that we had with Supercars, they told us that there was enough insurance cover to cover any damage that was done to houses. However, after the construction work, there was significant damage done to at least 9 houses that lined the circuit. This is because they're over 120 years old. They put in claims to Supercars insurers, as they were told to do. It's now 2 years later. They're still waiting for repairs. One of the homes that got very badly damaged, they ended up paying for the repairs themselves, a few $1,000s. Other people can't afford it, so they're still waiting for Supercars.
1 or 2 blocks across were complaining about what's happening to their houses. But you see, you couldn't make any claims. They said, oh, you're covered by insurance, but only if you can show us that you'd had your house certified before the race, because that damage could have been there before we were preparing for the race. So nobody ever got any insurance compensation, ever. Had to foot the bill themselves. And they will have to again.
There was a monument over here with sandstone curbing. They moved the monument up over here. Council paid for it, and they've concreted all the curbs. So a lot of the sandstone curbing's been lost. There used to also be cobblestones still on the corners. Well, they've all just been paved over.
As a business, I did not make any statements on social media about Supercars because of the trolling that happened, and it was vicious and it was instant. And if you looked at where that trolling came from, it was usually out of Newcastle. It was, in other parts of Australia. I don't think there was any acknowledgement about the impact that trolling did. We had asked some of the bureaucrats to make that stop, but that didn't happen. It continued. So to this day, I will not comment in social media about what my experience is.
I think the question is really, how did this happen? In order to build a motor racing circuit through a heritage area and state preservation area, they had to, of course, sweep aside all of the existing local planning legislation and environmental protection legislation. Now, this in itself is such an extraordinary idea because they claim it's only a temporary event for 3 days, yet they have to pass a special act of Parliament in order to bypass all of the planning legislation for these particular areas. They need both political parties on side, which they get by claiming that there are all of these benefits. It's going to bring into the state $57 million, they said, would come into Newcastle as a result of this event, and as a result of all of these interstate visitors coming, and also on the basis that it was going to promote Newcastle to the world, make it into a global city. There were going to be 217 million people watching Newcastle, which of course all turned out to be rubbish. Well, not all of the councillors, but certainly the two major political parties were very convinced that this was going to be a great event for Newcastle. And so they just decided to hand it over. They agreed before they had any information whatsoever, even about where the circuit was going to go, and they left it up to the council staff to do all the paperwork.
As I said, the first we heard that there was going to be something was the council meeting of July 2016. And that 10 minutes, and we'd got a bit of information before that, but that 10 minutes with hardly any backing information and lots of pressure, if you don't do this, the city is going to miss out on $1 squillion. So if you say no, you basically will be a traitor, and we're going to pin a white feather to your chest.
I reckon Newcastle East was chosen because the imagery that you can get is pretty spectacular. You've got very old, lovely homes. You've got access to the harbour and to the beaches. So I can see from New South Wales tourism's point of view, it's great imagery. So I get why they did it. I just think it was a very cruel decision.
What they want is sponsorship money, and what they need is a downtown feel for their billboards. The circuit is lined with billboards which promote their sponsors. And the heritage streets in our beautiful beachside was the perfect backdrop for their sponsors.
Supercars, we begged them to do it, to consult with us. They weren't going to do it because they knew that we were pretty wise people here and that we're just not going to wear it anyway. I think they would have seen consulting it as useless waste of time, which it would have been for them.
I was so surprised at the lack of consultation with business owners, and as I know quite a few of the residents in Newcastle East, it soon became quite apparent that there was just not going to be any meaningful communication with any of us. It was such a short-sighted decision not to include us, that is the businesses and residents, in the planning, because we could have helped solve some of the problems as they'd come along, but it was just very confronting.
What sort of consultation was possible after all of the decisions had already been made? And what sort of consultation is possible for residents if nobody has any information about what's going on?
I think they've got a woman in charge that you have to contact on behalf of any reservations or complaints you've got, and they just wriggle their way out, you know. There's no satisfaction in doing it. Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of misinformation that's been given, and even now I don't think that there's much transparency in the actual success of supercars. I don't think it's reasonable to fudge figures. I think we all know that the attendance wasn't counted by Ticketek. It was actually counted by the number of pings of it using our mobile phones, and that included Cook's Hill and the Hill, of which a lot of people didn't go to the race.
Now, Supercars claimed that at the first event there were 192,000 people. We have shown that this is absolutely exaggerated. The Newcastle Council contracted out an evaluation to the Hunter Research Foundation, and Supercars used Telstra data in order to assess the visitor uplift. And the Telstra data actually said that there were 192,000 people in all of Newcastle and Cook's Hill. So we worked out, in fact, there couldn't have been any more than 77,000 at that first event. So far as the viewing numbers go, the other claim that they make is that there were going to be 240 million people worldwide viewing the event. Well, that 240 million people is based upon Foxtel's reach, not whether people are actually watching it. In fact, anybody can look up the viewing numbers, and what we did find out that Supercars event that first year came in 17th. So the idea that there are 240 million people worldwide watching this event is absolutely outrageous. But it was the claim that council themselves made when they justified their expenditure on this event.
Take the car in a minute, we can get it.
I get angry, and it's not a good space to be in, whether you're old or even young, because I think being angry most of the time, which I am most of the time, where it's all going on around us from September on, I seem to be angry and cranky a lot, and I don't think that's good for your body.
Being alongside the community, what I've witnessed is a lot of despair and hopelessness. And I think when people realise that governments legislated against communities in instances like this, it puts you in a place that's very flat and very despairing, really. And it's not until you bump up hard against an issue like this that you really realise the impact of legislation like that. So for our government to legislate so that you can't have any financial, any environmental or health comeback on impacts of things like supercars, I think that's extraordinary that happens in a democratic country such as ours.
With regard to the effects of supercars on my health, it has had an effect over the past 4 years and is likely to have an ongoing effect. When the peninsula was dug up for the start of supercars, whichever way the wind blew, there was dust from somewhere happening at that time, and I developed rosacea. It was a recurrent problem. It had been around 10 years ago and had gone away. It suddenly all started again, and this time it affected my eyes. I'm still suffering from ocular rosacea. It is very difficult to get rid of once it's hit your eyes. This meant that my eyes were totally swollen. I couldn't see out of them. My left eye was so swollen that it wouldn't shut properly. A side effect of that has been damage to my cornea, which means that I have very limited vision in my left eye, and certainly both my optometrist and the eye specialist that I deal with think that that's a permanent problem. Obviously, the threat to my eyes and my appearance had a major effect on my mental health. As well as that, there was the stress from trying to manage my business when people couldn't get in here, teachers couldn't get in here, parents couldn't get in here, there was constant traffic jams, there was very poor communication in terms of both supercars and the council with how that was managed during that first year. And I've been treated for depression since then. And the stress was so bad that year that I got to the point where I felt as if sometimes I could hardly even speak. My best way of dealing with it was to actually swim right out the back. I'm an ocean swimmer, and I would swim 1 kilometre out from Newcastle Beach and just have a rest right out. I must say the lifesavers were a bit anxious, and then I would swim back in and I'd do my couple of kilometres, but I would be out beyond the dust and able to take a different perspective on what was happening. And that was a key factor in helping me to survive.
I am depressed a lot of the time. And I keep away so I don't see it, and I maybe will avoid getting too depressed. Yeah.
In terms of looking forward, I would hope that Newcastle isn't held financially responsible for supercars. I think that a lot of our resources has gone into propping up supercars, and they take a lot of money out of here. Some businesses have done very well, and I'm delighted for them, particularly in hospitality. There's a lot that haven't done well. It would be good if the race could be held somewhere else in Newcastle. And I'm sure there could be other places.
Well, obviously the thing we'd love to happen was to have the council say enough, no more, and give it back to them, because we're not going to lose that much money, as they found out in Homebush, by just cancelling it.
On a more serious note, it is really fantastic to see so many of you here tonight to support the launch of this incredibly well-researched book by Christine and Therese, Wrong Track, What Drove Supercars to Newcastle. We're going to have a round of
Hello. This is fantastic. This is our community, and this is our story, and this is our book. Congratulations, everyone. It's wonderful. It makes me happy.
People just don't understand. Hence, the big issue for us has been trying to get our message out there that this is not just a temporary event for 3 days. This is having significant impacts on people's lives, and we want people to know about these impacts and help us move the event to a more appropriate place.